Happy Thanksgiving-ish time, my friends. Welcome to Rollin' Rambles. Today, we need to have a serious conversation about open source software because things are going very poorly. It seems to me that in front of everyone, right under everyone's noses, yet somehow still behind our backs, the open source software ecosystem is slowly but surely burning to the ground. There are a lot of people who are involved in open source software that are pretty prominent that are starting to be banned or kicked out or silenced or losing access to contribution or whatever. And they aren't necessarily losing it for the best of reasons. And the behavior around it in particular is very peculiar. The most recent, as of this filming, is Kent Overstreet, the developer of a file system in the Linux kernel called bcachefs, has been temporarily banned for being abusive or using abusive, harmful language or some other nonsense like that towards another developer. Used a lot of expletives on, I believe, the kernel mailing list to talk to somebody else. And Kent Overstreet is known for this. He's got a reputation. He is eccentric and loud and bombastic, kind of like me, basically. I don't know if he's autistic or just a boss guy, but the bottom line is that Kent has a tendency to do things his way and expect that other people will go along with the things that he does his way. So him being the primary developer and functionally, as far as major contributions go, we could possibly say the only real developer of bcachefs in the Linux kernel. It kind of is a whatever he says goes thing with that. But I'm not really here to argue for Kent's behavior or whatever. What I think is interesting is that the standards by which Kent has been banned from making contributions to the 6.13 kernel would have gotten Linus Torvalds, who he had several words with himself, banned from his own project. Now, this is one of the biggest cancers in open source, is Linus Torvalds, or Linus, or whatever you want to call him, has been ideologically captured by social justice, far left, whatever you want to call them, wokies, you name it. But radical leftist psychopaths have ideologically captured Torvalds, and it seems to have happened through his daughter. There was an apology letter he put out for his bad behavior in the past. This is a long time ago, actually. Like I'm talking like 8 to 10 years ago, I believe. He put out this apology letter after that, saying that he was taking a break, and people noticed that it was worded funny, and it had Unicode characters in an email where he would never have used Unicode characters, and it basically reeked of someone else wrote it, and it was copy-pasted, and Torvalds didn't actually write it. We can pretty much, at this point, based on context clues, guess that Linus Torvalds is sort of a slave to the leftists. He's sort of in a hostage situation, a permanent hostage situation, under the thumb of far left ideology. His daughter seems to have played a big part in that. Patricia Torvalds, I believe her name is, and because she's definitely one of those crazy far leftists that you would have seen screeching at people in YouTube videos 10 years ago during the whole SJW Gamergate blah 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 era of the internet. Sorry about that. A lot of the excitement of these videos is that, you never know what's going to come up because I'm literally driving down the street. Not on my phone. Morons, see these? Where's the phone? Don't know where it is because I have a professional camera rig. Anyway, Linus Torvalds, bottom lining this so we don't get too deep into the weeds, he has become, over time, a far leftist, basically pussy lunatic that cannot be trusted, is not a good steward of the Linux kernel, the very thing that he created. He is a cancer. He is a cancer for. So we cannot trust Linus Torvalds to really take good care of the kernel, because he has ceded control of the kernel to other people who have serious issues with sensitivity and petty power struggles and so on. You know, your classic leftist, Marxist, whatever you want to call them. But the cancer of society and the internet in the modern era, those are the people that crafted a code of conduct for Linux and are punishing Kent Overstreet using the same code of conduct that both Torvalds and several other developers in the past that have had some heated discussions with lots of F-bombs and such would have very easily fallen under. Now, why is it that other people can get heated but not Kent Overstreet without getting temporarily banned? Probably because they don't like him. These people don't like Kent Overstreet. If it weren't for the fact that he's doing something that is at least supposedly really meaningful, making a modern, high-tech, fancy-pants file system that does a whole lot of really cool stuff. I've never used it. I can't testify to that myself. But, you know, he's basically making a cutting-edge file system for Linux, and he's practically doing it by himself. Not totally by himself, but close enough. But he's got a personality they don't like. And this reminds me so much, as I am autistic. I remember very vividly throughout my entire life being treated poorly because of my autism. Unfortunately, one of the problems is that autistic people, and I'm not saying Kent's autistic, but I certainly am, autistic people can sometimes have moments where they go off the deep end, where they get really angry for a brief time, and then they have to walk away. Now, you know what's really funny about that is that while it can be pretty serious if you're autistic, that's what normal people do too. Normal people have issues where from time to time they go a bit off the deep end and get really mad and have to cool off. In a corporate environment, which is what this whole thing is smelling like, in a corporate environment, the way that you deal with it is you keep your mouth shut because you know you'll lose your job. But when you're voluntarily spending your time writing code for Linux kernel, doing it for free, as they say, just, you know, getting that Reddit moderator paycheck. When you're sitting there doing all this labor for free for the benefit of other people, yeah, there's no reason that you should have to tolerate other people treating you poorly. Now, Kent can say a bunch of bad stuff, and other people can say a bunch of bad stuff back. And that's the beauty of open discourse, is that you can call people bad things, you can tell them exactly what you think of them, and they have every right to tell you exactly what they think of you too. You get it out of your system, and then you calm down, you go, sorry, I went a little overboard, yeah, you're right about this, you're not right about that. And the funny thing about it is that in the end, Kent Overstreet, he did exactly what I just said. He did cool off, walk away for a minute, and go, hey, I realize I went a little overboard, and I apologize personally to the one person that was the recipient of my anger and my upset, whatever. And they're right about this, and I still think I'm right about that, and so on. Just exactly what you would expect. You know, even in professional environments, people get heated sometimes, and they have to cool off. And that's what happened. Now, this has happened many times over the course of history in Linux. It's not some sort of like random rare occurrence. It's actually sort of on brand for old school Linus Torvalds before he became basically cucked by leftist ideology, by his daughter and psychos on the internet bullying him and possibly blackmailing him into kowtowing to, you know, basically their ideological perspective on things. So Kent did this and he got banned anyway. He officially got banned for not apologizing hard enough. No joke. Never apologize to these scumbags. Never, ever. It is a waste of your time to publicly apologize on the internet. It was not a waste of Kent's time to apologize to the person that he hurled a bunch of F and S bombs and such at. But he probably should have done it in private, because you don't want these psychopaths thinking that you give in to them. Otherwise, they smell the blood in the water, and like psychotic little blue-haired sharks, they bomb around and they go on a feeding frenzy and eat you up. And so they're like, yeah, you apologized, but you didn't apologize hard enough, so we're going to ban you. The truth is, though, and we all know this because up until Kent Overstreet, this was not an issue. But suddenly now it is an issue. Suddenly now this whole Code of Conduct Committee is going to censure Kent Overstreet. Well, okay. Why is that? It's because they don't like him. It's because people don't like the way that he behaves. He's weird. He's weird and he acts funny and angry. He gets angry and he lets people know it. He tells people what he thinks. He's right all the time, even if he's not. You know, he's not an office simp. He's not an office simp, and that's what it really boils down to. He is his own person. Doesn't necessarily do things the right way or the nicest way. But damn it, you know where he stands. And they don't like that. Get in line, Kent. We'll ban you from the Colonel. Well, you know what? Here's what I think, Kent Overstreet, if you're watching this, what I think is that you need to quit. You need to quit entirely. Not only that, but any of those patches that you were going to submit, just never do it. Take away your time and labor from the Linux kernel project. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, Kent Overstreet won't be here anymore? Oh, that sounds wonderful. Please make this happen. In fact, I got that exact response when I suggested that on a Lunduke video. In the comments, someone was like, oh, Kent would leave? Oh, that'd be wonderful. Okay, yeah, you say that'd be wonderful, but keep in mind, this is one guy who is developing a modern Linux file system, a cutting-edge file system for Linux that surpasses everything to date, or at least it's supposed to, but largely by himself. He's a friggin' workhorse, and none of this has anything to do with whether or not his stuff was technically good or bad. They banned him from contributing for a while because he stuck his head up and he got in a fight with someone and they intervened and said, oh no, you can't be mean to people here on Linux kernel thing. You can't be mean to people that when you have an argument, you have to have toxic positivity, or otherwise you can't be here. Just leave, Kent. Seriously, just leave. Fork the friggin' kernel. I guarantee you there are enough people who are calling for the Linux kernel project to be forked. And it doesn't mean you can't steal all the code from them whenever they put it out there. But damn it, fork the Linux kernel into your own thing. I'm waiting for Kentux or Kentix. That's what we need. We need Kentix. Do it, man. Because if you take your time and effort away from this project, they don't get it anymore. They don't hear from you anymore, and you can do something that spites them. You can do something that burns them for treating you like crap. That's what you need to do. Don't give any more to these people. Another thing I've noticed, though, and someone pointed this out, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized, hey, this may actually be a big source of the problem. Linux is heavily corporatized at this point. Major billion-dollar multinational conglomerate corporations like Red Hat and Intel, they have their fangs sunk very deeply into the entire open source ecosystem, but especially the Linux kernel. These humongous corporations have a lot of control over the kernel. And guess what? The people who complained about this to the Code of Conduct Committee, Intel, it was Intel developers. Of course it was Intel developers that did it. About a decade ago, when there was Linus and some guy named Morrow got in a fight on the Linux kernel mailing list, and not anything really that unusual, but Sarah Sharp shows up, a leftist woman shows up and goes, oh, you shouldn't be mean. You should, I'm tone policing you, Linus Torvalds. You need to be better. And she turned into a giant, basically she was the blue-haired bug in the Linux kernel at that point. Guess where Sarah Sharp worked? Guess what Sarah Sharp's email ended in? At Intel.com. Sarah Sharp was an Intel worker too. It seems that Intel is a big cancer on the kernel. But it's not just Intel. It's not just the Linux kernel. Obviously, we have discussed already all of these little issues with the Linux kernel, these things that have sunk their fangs in. They've set this stupid code of conduct that gives them control through boards and such, it's basically been co-opted. Same thing happened in NixOS. They had a board structure. The board was overrun with these psychos, and they ousted the founder. No shortage of open source software projects at this point have been anywhere from somewhat hampered in their development to basically arrested in their development by leftist, social justice warrior, Marxist, you take your pick. But it's funny how there's this sort of this decentralized group of walking bugs, walking errors in society that they always fit in one or more of those labels: leftist, Marxist, social justice warrior, woke, take your pick, whatever you want to call them, far left, radical, ideologues, a lot of them. And they're always behind the destruction of these projects. It's not about making it better. It's not about creating a nice environment. It's about shutting up and getting rid of anybody that they don't control. And you would think with the recent election and President Trump effectively getting a mandate, an overwhelming majority of the American population voted for Donald Trump to be president. You would think that in a country where Donald Trump is the first Republican to win the popular vote in decades, that somehow this problem would start to go away. But no, what is happening right now is that these crazy people have sunk in deeper. They see that the writing's on the wall and that there are a lot of people out there who are really sick of their crap and don't want to and aren't going to put up with it anymore and intend to do something about them. But that means that it's time for them to dig in deep, to put their heels in the dirt, build some concrete foundation for their bunker so that they can cement themselves in these projects and thereby retain some control over the projects and therefore society. Because here's the thing, here's the brutal truth. C code does not care what your politics are. Computers don't care about your politics. Just like facts don't care about your feelings, my desktop does not care about your perceived racism, sexism, bigotry, or positive discrimination, none of it. My desktop does not care. My laptop does not care. Hey, cell phone, do you care? No, I don't care. Yeah, my cell phone doesn't care either. See, for some reason I can talk to it and it talks back. And that's totally not just me doing a voice. Yeah, technology does not care about politics. The problem is politics just won't leave technology because everybody, all the normies have the technology in their homes now. All the normies use technology. If the technology, if they can't control society through college because more people aren't going to college or are dropping out because degrees are now useless because they're all liberal arts degree garbage, or college is actually starting to become a sign that you shouldn't hire people because of the indoctrination issues and the fact that it's just a bad financial decision overall. There's no real way for these people that want to control things through the ways that they have over the past few decades. So now they have to take over the technology you use. If you've wondered why Google search sucks, this is why. Google search sucks because they're shoveling it over to the AI because it keeps you in the Google ecosystem. But remember, part of the Google ecosystem is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Part of the Google ecosystem is all of these political ideologies that have no place in answering my questions. My questions should be answered with facts, with logic, not with, we can't tell you this because the results might be bigoted. Okay, but I still want to know. If they can make it so, much like if they can control the language, they can keep you from being able to express an idea. If they control the technology, they can keep you from accessing or from learning about an idea. They can keep you from discovering things. If they can keep you in the Google ecosystem and Google has an agenda they wish to push, Google can push that agenda on you because you're in the Google ecosystem and you're not leaving it. If they're not running the high risk, of letting you go somewhere else to find your answers to your questions, to find the information that you need. If they, hang on just a second, there's a woo-woo up here. But if you're not allowed to leave the Google ecosystem, then what are you going to do? See, you can't learn about other sides because there is no other side. There is Google's side, and you're stuck in it. And if you try to leave it, Google will do what they can to keep you from doing that. They'll use dark patterns to keep you from going to search results. Hey, if you're in a search for something, hey, why don't you try Gemini AI? This happens, it's not just Google either. Everybody's doing this nonsense now. DuckDuckGo. Oh, why don't you try our little, I don't even remember what the stupid thing is called, but, why don't you try our AI that you can ask stuff? They want you to ask your questions and get the answers through something on their end that generates the answers, not only because then you stay there, but then you conform because now you don't have the opportunity to go somewhere else. Dark patterns are all around you. This is really starting to become kind of a scattered rant, isn't it? But that's the thing. This is such a big, widespread problem that affects so many aspects of everything that the only way to properly talk about it is to talk about everywhere that the cancer has set root and infected and is now digging in because there's a very real risk that some people just aren't going to take it anymore. I seriously think Kent Overstreet needs to bail. I think that everybody that has had enough of the crap from these major projects that have allowed, whose leadership have allowed the project to be taken over by the kind of people who would push a code of conduct onto the project, which, by the way, I have made videos about this before, but I will reiterate here now. A code of conduct is not about being nicer or more polite or more respectful or more professional or any of that. That's the lie that's used to sell it. It's actually about setting rules in place that are worded the way that the people pushing the code of conduct want so that they can perform something called rules lawyering. Rules lawyering is where you argue in the letter of the law, often contrary to the spirit of the law. So if you set a rule, don't be hateful, the spirit of the law is pretty obvious, right? Don't be hateful. Except if they can pretzel twist, mental gymnastic their way into making anything that's said by anyone they don't like into hate, like, oh, that hurt my feelings because it's hateful and mean and bigoted, it's a dog whistle, you name it, then it violates the rule. But when we put the code of conduct in place, that wasn't what we meant. What we meant was that, if somebody's like telling you that we should die or something, oh no, you just need to get educated. See, hate is so much more than that. Hate is not when someone expresses a direct desire for me to be harmed. No, if someone says something that can be twisted to, in the worst possible faith, interpreted as wanting me to be harmed, that also is hate. Therefore, you have no choice because you agreed to this, you agreed to the rules, you agreed that you won't allow hate. This is hate. I've explained, you moron running the project, why it's hate. So you have to stop the hate. So stop the hate. It's your job. You agree to the rules. And you're not above the law, are you? The simple answer is, yeah, you are above the law. You never should have put that law in place in the first place. So what's your problem? Why'd you do that? But yeah, you're above the law. You run the project. You can tell them to go kick rocks. You don't have to have a code of conduct. And the funny thing about it, Linux for 25 years or so, didn't have a code of conduct. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might be closer to 30. But there was no code of conduct, because if someone shows up and contributes code to the project and is new, then they don't know what they're doing and they'll be treated with kid gloves or assumed to just not really, they don't carry much weight. But then if you do carry a bunch of weight, if you are seasoned, if you're a developer that knows what they're doing, that has made contributions in the past, if you know what you're doing and you're well known, then what you say carries a bunch of weight, but you also generally know how to get along with the other people on the project. Now, Kent might not get along with the other people on the project all that well from time to time. I'm not saying that Kent is a good guy. I'm not saying that Kent behaved well. But what I'm saying is that there's no reason for these people to pretend like Kent's words were harmful. Kent's words didn't harm anyone. And here's a real harsh fact of life. This is something that nobody wants to say, nobody wants to admit. You're not allowed to say, because the only thing that's allowed in this day and age is toxic positivity. My God, when I heard it called toxic positivity, I knew exactly what they meant, and it stuck like crazy, because that's exactly what it is. The omission of verbal abuse that is necessary as a social mechanism for conditioning others to behave better has caused a severe issue with our society. See, certain people can behave poorly because they're supported by the existing power structures that they built on the premise that existing power structures don't support them. So they co-opt existing power structures and do exactly what they accuse the power structures of doing when they weren't doing that before. It really is frustrating, isn't it? Anyway, I sort of lost it there for a minute. There's so much going through my head right now that it's difficult for me to express it properly. So I suppose it'd be a good time to end this rant. I honestly don't know how much more I could even say about it. I mean, I've made videos about codes of conduct before. You should probably check those out. I have a whole playlist about political and discussion stuff, and I'm sure it's in there. Just look for something under political discussion videos that has to do with computers. You'll probably find plenty of it. But, you know, there's all these other issues with Linux that make it not acceptable for most users. And I've gone over that too. I've gone off on several rants about basic issues, like the video player in the Cinnamon environment, celluloid, being the most bare bones thing ever, barely being good enough to play a video, not really serving as a good video player, but instead as just, well, screw it, we made something that plays videos, here you go, take it, losers. Not putting a very good foot forward for Linux adoption. It's not good to have garbage software as the things that you stick front and center as, hey, here's what you need to use. And yet, there it is. So, but those issues already existed long ago, and they'll probably continue to exist. Do we really need to stack on top of that these political psychopaths that have taken over all the projects and rotted them? I think it's time. And I'm not saying that I'm the one to do this, but I think it's time that there is a very real effort by a concerted group of people who are tired of the BS to replace all of these major projects with new ones that have not been ideologically captured. The problem is momentum. Momentum, there's literally billions upon billions of Linux installations. Every Android phone I've ever owned runs the Linux kernel. Almost every router I've ever owned, in the past decade at least, has had a Linux kernel at the core. Some of them have VxWorks or whatever. There are other kernels, but in general, Linux has basically won the most of the embedded space. It is the kernel of choice for the vast majority of people developing any new hardware project to run it. And that's the problem, is that that's what everything is at this point. Everything is centered around the Linux kernel and the software ecosystem that's built up around that. Replacing that will not be easy. And even harder will be replacing that with something whose primary motivation is to discard all of the bad people that have tainted all of the other existing projects. Basically to leave all the garbage in the dust. But that does mean starting from scratch or from a more minimal standpoint and building your way up. It's a monumental task, and it's not something that one person can do. But man, it needs to happen. People need to walk away and do something else. Don't give these people your time and effort, because the bottom line is that you vote with your wallet. And in this case, in open source software, and any project really that is fueled largely by volunteer labor or whatever, you win by walking away. Don't give them your bug reports. Don't give them your fixes. Don't give them your labor. You vote with your time. Take your time elsewhere. You can take your time somewhere where it's actually appreciated by somebody. That's all you have to do. And this stops being an issue permanently. So just do it, man. Why not? Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, whatever. And I'll talk to you later. Take it easy.